Okay. Wow. Wow. Hold on a second. Okay, so another sound. Good. Notice goes out. Check to make sure we are streaming on Facebook. Yeah, there I am on Facebook. Okay, gang. So we're going to get started. And we are traveling out, so it's not going to be the same quality that you're used to when I'm in my office, but that's all right. It's what you got. It's what you got. You got to tolerate. Okay, so behind me is Govardhan Hill and the deer at Govardhan Hill. These are called Nilgai. Now, Nilgai means blue camels. And if you go to Govardhan Hill with me, you'll see them. You'll have the most ecstatic time of your life. You're all invited to come. So on demand from the devotees, I'm going to play this song again. We played it this morning. It's about Krishna's sweetness, and we sang one verse yesterday. Aturam, Maduram, Vadanam, Gadaram, Nayan Maduram, Achitam, Maduram, Dayam Maduram, Manam Maduram, Maduradi Patera Kilam Maduram. Vachamaduram, Charitam Maduram, Vasamaduram, Galitam Maduram, Galitam Maduram, Galitam Maduram, Madhurani Patera Kilam Maduram. Renu Maduro, Renu Madura, Pani Madura, Patu Madurao, Jam Maduram, Yam Maduram, Madhurani Patera Kilam Maduram. Gita Maduram, Pita Maduram, Bhutta Maduram, Shuddham Maduram, Rupa Maduram, Ilaka Maduram, Madhurani Patera Kilam Maduram. Kara Maduram, Tara Maduram, Kara Maduram, Ramanu Raduram, Mita Maduram, Mita Maduram, Madhuradi Patera Kilam Maduram. Kuja Madura, Madhu Madura, Yamuna Madura, Vichi Maduram, Jalita Maduram, Kamala Maduram, Madhurani Patera Kilam Maduram. Gopi Madura, Lila Madura, Yukta Maduram, Tam Maduram, Rishta Maduram, Shishta Yavo Madhura, Yasti Madhura, Shrishti Madhura, Lalita Madhuram, Lalita Madhuram, Madhura Nipatera Gilam Madhuram. Madhuram, Vada Madhuram, Nayana Madhuram, Shitam Madhuram, Daya Madhuram, Mana Madhuram, Madhura Nipatera Gilam Madhuram. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Ati Rama, Ati Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Jago, Haribo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parabhacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chalana the Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Madhumai Ki Jai Shrimati Vilasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Go. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Budale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pajarane Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarani. So it's good to see everybody again, and we are at Govardhan again. So what you see behind us are Nil cows, blue cows. Actually, they're deer. They're not actually blue cows, although they're called Nilgal. And this is a little baby one you see behind me. I took this shot actually. I was there at Govardhan and wish I was there now. I need to go ASAP back to Govardhan, back to home, back to Govardhan. Maybe I'll just take a quick week off and just go back and take a break. Okay. I wish I would, but I'm not going to right now. I got too many things to do, too much preaching to do. Okay. So now we'll go on to the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. Yesterday we finished chapter 21. Fantastical. And chapter 21 was Sanatana Goswami's discussion with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu about the sweetness and opulence of Krishna. And at the end of the chapter, if you remember, if you were there, at the end of the chapter, Lord Chaitanya admitted to Sanatana Goswami that he talked about subject matters that he didn't want to talk about because he was in so much ecstasy. Just talking about Krishna, that he forgot himself and revealed many intimate aspects of Krishna, particularly about the sweetness of Krishna. The chapter ended with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu describing the sweetness. That's why we basically chanted this particular song, which is originally written by Bilvamangal Thakur in his Krishna Caritamrta, and later, I guess, Vallabhacharya added a few verses or took it as his own song, I'm not sure. But originally it was actually part of the Krishna Caritamrta of Bilvamangal Thakur. And Bilvamangal Thakur predated Vallabhacharya by several centuries, and predated Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu too, because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a contemporary of Vallabhacharya. Vallabhacharya is the head of the Pushti Marg, which means the nourishing path. Okay, and we respect him. His followers sometimes consider him to be Mahaprabhu, but we understand Lord Chaitanya is Mahaprabhu. So let us go to where we're going to go to, Chaitanya Charitamrta. But first, Om Ganata Mirandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shikadave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorancia. Okay, so let's go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhaktivinoda. So chapter 22 is called The Process of Devotional Service. Now this is quite interesting, because generally we have Sambandha first, then Abhideya and Prayojana. So we had a lot of Prayojana. Prayojana means the goal of Krishna consciousness in the last chapter, and also Sambandha too. And here we're going to hear about Abhideya, which means the process of reaching the goal, which is called the sadhana, or the practice. There's practice, sadhana, and there's the goal, which is called saja. That is the goal. The chanting of Krishna's names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That chanting is both the goal and the process for achieving the goal. Sadhana and saja. Okay, so let's talk about the process of devotional service. This is really an interesting chapter, as are all chapters in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Here's the chapter summary. In the 22nd chapter, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu describes the process of devotional service. In the beginning, he describes the truth about the living entity and the super excellence of devotional service. He then describes the uselessness of mental speculation and mystic yoga. In all circumstances, the living entity is recommended to accept the path of devotional service as personally explained by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. The speculative method of the so-called jnanis, that means people who try to detach themselves using their little brainies, is considered a waste of time, and is proved in this chapter. An intelligent person should abandon the process of karma kanda, that means material upliftment, jnana kanda, using your little brainies, and mystic yoga, performing austerities to get power. One should give up all these useless processes and take seriously to the path of Krishna consciousness. In this way, one's life will be successful. If one takes the Krishna consciousness fully, even though he may sometimes be agitated due to having previously practiced mental speculation and yogic mysticism, he will be saved by Lord Krishna himself. The fact is that devotional service is bestowed by the blessings of a pure devotee, Samahatma Sudurla. A pure devotee is the supreme transcendentalist, and one has to receive his mercy for one's dormant Krishna consciousness to be awakened. One has to associate with pure devotees. If one has firm faith in the words of a great soul, pure devotional service will awaken. So that's the key. To associate with pure devotees. How do we associate? By hearing and by serving. In this chapter, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just like there's the story of Srivas Thakur's tailor, who was basically a meat eater, Malacha. And because he was Srivas Thakur's tailor and had been serving Srivas Thakur, I guess, causelessly with devotion, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him pure love of God. So there's no material prerequisite. Of course, I'm not saying that one should be a Malacha and expect pure love of God. That's more or less like what we call Kripa Siddha. One gets perfection by special mercy. In this chapter, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu differentiates between a pure devotee and others. He also describes the characteristics of a pure devotee. A devotee's most formidable enemy is association with women in an enjoying spirit. There's nothing wrong with women, nothing wrong with talking to them, and nothing wrong with women being spiritual masters and like that. And also, but one tries to enjoy someone else. And that also applies, one's devotee's most formidable enemy, if someone is a lady, is the enjoying spirit of men. You want to enjoy a man. Yuck. Or enjoy a woman. Yuck. Yucky. We should want to serve. Just like one time with Gorkashodas Babaji Maharaj, a couple came to him and they asked Gorkashodas Babaji Maharaj, what should we do? We just got married. Honeymoon type stuff. And he said, you, the husband, should always serve the wife and cook for her and do anything else for her. Oh, because he was thinking he got married to have an unpaid servant to enjoy. But actually, we are meant to serve others. So if a devotee gets married and they serve their spouse, or husband or spousini, then association with the opposite sex, that is women to men and men to women, will not be detrimental. If someone serves rather than enjoying, the whole idea is, if one tries to enjoy anyone else or anything else, that's detrimental. Association with non-devotees is also condemned because there's a formidable enemy on the path of devotional service. Why is that? Because Karanam Guna Sangasha. Everyone, every situation has some moods of nature connected to it. And when you get wet paint on you, you turn the color of the paint. The modes are like wet paint. You touch them, touch, and you get that color. Why am I feeling so crazy? Because I'm associated with something or modes of nature, or someone who has the modes of nature who has these issues. So this is a really important word. One has to be really careful. That's why, for example, I only eat food that's cooked by someone who's cooking with devotion. If someone hates me and they cook, or is cooking because they're getting paid, uh-oh, one of you is using, okay, I'm going to have to change something here because one of you is misusing your privileges. Let me just erase what they did. Someone just like tried to annotate my screen, and this is my screen. No one can annotate my screen unless me, and so I turned off those privileges. So anyways, so this is like if you eat food that's cooked by someone who has the wrong mood, not devotional, then guess what? Your mind becomes wicked. And you start to think of so many wild things. You may have so many dreams. Crazy dreams. One has to fully surrender into the lotus feet of Krishna and give up the attraction for women and non-devotees, or for women give up the enjoying spirit. If one sees Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavihastani Shuni Chagas Vapaki Cha Pandita Samadarshana, one sees beyond the body and sees the equality of all inherent equality of all living entities, and doesn't try to enjoy or exploit others. The enjoying spirit and exploitation of others, that is the real problem. The 6 symptoms of fully surrendered souls are also described in this chapter. Devotional service has been divided into 2 categories: regulative devotional service and spontaneous love. And sometimes Prabhupada would describe that like learning to play the piano. For example, when you learn to play the piano, you do all these regulative things. What do I mean by regulative things? You play scales. Right? You don't just pick up the piano unless you're actually a child protege. But anyway, generally you have to play scales and practice all sorts of things. Let me turn the volume up a little bit. It's necessary to do those things. Why is it necessary to do those things? So that you can later on come to the spontaneous platform. And then when you're on the spontaneous platform, then then you can do things spontaneously with your emotions. But in the beginning, it's practice, and then you become perfect. There are 64 items listed in regulative devotional service, and out of these 64, the last 5 are considered very important. By practicing even one of the 9 processes of devotional service, one can become successful. These are going to be listed here. Speculative knowledge and mystic yoga can never help one in devotional service. Pious activities, nonviolence, sense control, and regulations are not separate from devotional service in its pure form. In other words, you get all these things automatically. All good qualities, yes, asti bhakti bhagavata kinchana. All good qualities come if you become a devotee. If one engages in devotional service, all good qualities follow. Actually, that's what Prabhupada just said. Sorry, what I just said. I am anticipating Prabhupada's words. Well, because I am Prabhupada's servant. One does not have to cultivate them separately. Spontaneous devotional service arises when one follows a pure devotee who is awakened to spontaneous love of God. So I am following Prabhupada, and spontaneous whatever is awakening. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu describes the symptoms of devotees who are already situated in spontaneous love of God. He also describes the devotees who are trying to follow in the footsteps of pure devotees. Which are we? So, there are symptoms. One, Brahmabhutta prasanatmana sochatina kankshati. That's one symptom. One's not hankering for material things or lamenting because you lost something. Okay, we'll start the chapter right now. Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Tam Karunarnavam Kalavapyati Buddhayam Bhakti Udyena Prakashita. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is an ocean of transcendental mercy, and although the subject matter of Bhakti Yoga is very confidential, he has nonetheless manifested it so nicely, even in this age of Kali, the age of quarrel. It's really a contaminated age. I mean, every day I'm astounded to hear how contaminated people are in this age. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktivinoda. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Nityananda Prabhu, all glories to Dvaita Chandra, and all glories to all the devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. These are the preliminary verses. In each chapter it's like that. So now we start. Eta kahilun samandata vera vichara Veda Shastre Upadeshe Krishna Ekatsara. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I have described one's relationship with Krishna in various ways. This is the subject matter of all the Vedas. Krishna is the center of all activities. Eve Kahishuna Abhideya Lakshana Yaha Haiti Pai Krishna Krishna Prema Tanha. Now I shall speak about the characteristics of devotional service by which one can attain the shelter of Krishna and his loving transcendental service. Krishna Bhakti Avideya Sarashastre Koya Otoya Munigana Karihache Nishchaya. A human being's activities should be centered only in devotional service to Lord Krishna. That is the verdict of all Vedic literatures, and all saintly people have firmly concluded this. Wow. Okay. Shruti Mata Prishta Dishati Vavadarādhana Vidim Yatam Turvani Smitirapi Tatavaktiva Gane Purana Jadyeva Saksha Nivahaste Tadanuga Ataksacham Janatamurakara Avameva Sharanam. When the mother Vedas, Shruti, is questioned as to whom to worship, she says that you are the only Lord and worshipable object. Similarly, the corollaries of the Shruti Shastras. Shruti Shastras means the Rig Veda, Atharva Veda, Samveda, Yajur Veda. The Smriti Shastras, Smriti means like to remember, like the Upanishads, give the same instructions just like sisters. The Puranas, that means old, who are like brothers following the footsteps of their mother. Of course, there's also Itihasas, which means histories. Puranas have some historical content to them, but they're actually quite different. Of the enemy of the demon Mora, there was a demon Mora, the conclusion is that you are the only shelter. Now I've understood this in truth. This is a quotation from the Vedic literature and was spoken by the Lord, to the Lord by great sages. Advayagana Tattva Krishna Swayam Bhagavan Sarupashati Rupe Tanra Haya Avastan. Krishna is the non-dual absolute truth, the supreme personality of Godhead. Although he is one, he maintains different personal expansions and energies for his pastimes. We talked about this before. Krishna expands himself. He's just one person acting differently, different places, different circumstances simultaneously, inconceivably. The Lord has many potencies, but he is non-different from all these potencies. Because the potencies and the potent cannot be separated, they are all identical. Krishna is described as the source of all potencies, and he's also identified with the external potency, the material energy. Krishna also has internal potencies or spiritual potencies which are always engaged in his personal service. His internal potency is different from his external potency. Internal means spiritual potency. External potency means the potency of this world, Maya, illusion, material energy. Krishna's internal potency and Krishna himself, who is the potent, are always identical. Actually, one and different simultaneously. Identical, and there's some difference in variety simultaneously. Swam Savivinam Savrupe Hana Vishtara Ananda Vaikunda Brahmande Karena Vihara. Krishna expands himself in many forms. Some of them are personal expansions and some are separate expansions. So there's the word Swamsa, means his personal expansions, like Vishnu Tattva expansions, like Krishna, Narayan, like that, Balora. And then the separated expansions or Vibhinamsas, that's like me, you. We are also his expansions. That's pretty good. I'm Krishna's expansion. Krishna also says this in Kita Mami Vangsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that the living entities are his expansions. There's Angsa. But Manashakstani Indriyani Prakritistani Karshati, that we are struggling right now with the senses. We can't keep ourselves from doing things. We're forced to act helplessly. Ooh, it's terrible being controlled by the tongue, by the eyes, by the senses, by being led around. I mean, for example, in the old days, they used to lead a bull around by his nose. They put a ring in his nose and lead him around. So you may think, that's cruel. Yes, but we are being cruelly led around, sometimes by our nose, sometimes by the tongue, sometimes by the ears, a sense of touch. That's cruel. I want to be independent. I don't want to be controlled by these things. I'm declaring my sense of independence. Thus he performs pastimes in both the spiritual and the material worlds. The spiritual worlds are the Vaikuntha planets, we talked about that in the last chapter, and the material universes are the Brahmandas, gigantic globes governed by Lord Brahma. And this is, of course, each gigantic globe has one Lord Brahma. We're not talking about the planets, we're talking about the universes, the multiverse, as mentioned in quantum mechanics. So, Swamsha Vistara Chaturvyuha Vataragana Vibhinamsha Jiva Tanra Shaktite Ganana. Expansions of his personal self, like the quadruple expansions of Shankarshan, Prajuna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva, descend as incarnations for Vaikuntha to this material world. The separate expansions of the living entities, us. Although the expansions of Krishna, they're counted among his different potencies. So, of course, the first Chaturvyuha expansion, or not even expansion, first chapter, the Vyuha manifestation, not expansion, is Krishna, Balaram, Prajuna, and Aniruddha. From there you get Vasudeva, who is the head of the Chaturvyuha expansions. Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Prajuna, and Aniruddha. Sankarshan is another name of Balaram, and Vasudeva is another name of Krishna. And Prajuna is another name of Prajuna, and Aniruddha is another name of Aniruddha. The person, and Vibhinamsa, that's us. Another name of us is Jiva soul. Another name of us is marginal potency. The personal expansions are known as Vishnu Tattva, and the separated expansions are known as Jiva Tattva. Although the Jivas, that's us, a part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are still counted amongst his multi-potencies. This is fully described by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 7.5, very important verse. Aparayam itas twanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yedam daryate jagat. Now the translation is here nicely. Besides this inferior nature, O mighty-armed Arjuna, there's another superior energy of mind which comprises the living entities for exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. Although the living entities are Krishna's parts and parcels, they are Prakriti, not Purusha. That means there's Krishna's energy. They're not the supreme male person. Sometimes, and actually, constitutionally, we're all female in relationship to Krishna. That's interesting, Krishna's energy. Sometimes Prakriti, a living entity, attempts to imitate the activities of the Purusha. In other words, we try to imitate Krishna. Haven't we seen that? Sometimes even people in political power try to do that. I saw the past president of the United States try to become a Purusha, even though he's a Prakriti, and he failed miserably, although he hasn't given up his attempts. Due to a poor fund of knowledge, living entities conditioned in the material world claim to be God. They don't necessarily always say that they're God, but they act as if they were God, which is the same thing as claiming. Actions speak louder than words. Thus they are illusion. The living entity cannot be on the level of Vishnu Thakur or the personality of God at any stage. Therefore it is ludicrous for a living entity to claim to be God or to act like he's God. Acting like you're God means to act like you're independent. You could do anything you want. You could lie, you could cheat, you could steal, and you're going to live forever. You're not going to die. You're going to be the controller, the enjoyer, etc. like that. Ishwaraham Hambogi, Siddhoham Balavan Sukhi. Advanced spiritualists would never accept such a thing. Such claims are made to cheat ordinary foolish people. The Krishna consciousness movement declares war against such bogus incarnations. The bogus propaganda put out by people claiming to be God. Now, Prabhupada's here, of course, referring to people who directly declare themselves to be God, which is kind of really stupid. Really stupid. I'm God. What kind of God are you? Getting old? Getting sick? If you were God, if I was God, I wouldn't get old, I wouldn't get sick. If I couldn't the airplane to fly around it, I certainly wouldn't have to travel coach class in the airplane ever. What's God traveling coach class? I own everything. Kind of stupid. All these gods died too, or are dying. This propaganda has killed Krishna consciousness all over the world. And sometimes they confuse the Jiva soul to be Vishnu Tama, except, we had one person who said to us that there was one bogus guru who said that Hanuman became Ram when he's with Ram. When he's not with Ram, he's a servant to Ram. When he's with Ram, he becomes... What? That is so stupid. Ignorant. Yuck. People are so dumb, they'll follow any dumb philosophy. I can't believe how stupid people are in this world. Members of the Krishna consciousness movement must be very alert to defy these rascals who are presently misleading the whole world. One such rascal, known as Pondraka, appeared before Lord Krishna, and the Lord immediately killed him. So this is a very interesting story from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Pondraka, he claimed that he was Vasudeva, which is the same as Krishna. And he said, Krishna, give up your different implements, that is the chakra, the club, the disc, and the lotus. Oh, chakra is disc, sorry. Anyway, give up your four symbols, the four symbols of Vishnu. So Krishna laughed, everybody laughed, and then Krishna went to see him and said, okay, if you like, I will give you, first of all, my chakra. And he said, oh, okay. And Krishna said, catch. Unfortunately, this Pondraka couldn't catch too well, but he did catch it with his neck. And of course, he literally and figuratively lost his head at that particular juncture. Of course, those who are Krishna's servants cannot kill some imitation God. We don't kill people. But they should try their best to defeat them through the evidence of Shastra, authentic knowledge received through the disciplic succession. We don't have to kill anybody. They're so stupid. It's like clowns. It's almost funny. It would actually be funny if they weren't misleading people. And people were so gullible. It amazes me how gullible people are. How they just follow the leader without thinking properly. I was just, okay, I'm not going to take a stance on vaccinations. And this is not my stance. I'm not going to talk about you should take vaccinations or you should not take vaccinations. Remember this. One devotee wrote to me, and this devotee said that basically the reason they're not taking a vaccination, even though they know it might be good for them, I said, I'm not taking a position. Don't blame me. Don't write me any hate mail. Even though they know it's good for them. I'm not saying this. Not my position. Forgive me. Even though they know it's good for them, they're not doing it because their friends will hate them if they do it. Okay, let's take this out of the realm of vaccinations. People really, really succumb to social pressure and will do crazy things like taking drugs and other things just to fit in with their friends. You know, another point is that sometimes I ask people, why do you use iPhones instead of Android phones? I'm not taking a position on this. I'm not saying what I use. I'm being very clear. This is just a hypothetical situation. And they say, because if I used an Android phone, my friends would not like me. Ooh, they would make fun of me. Because if you use an Android phone, when you send messages, then it comes out green on an iPhone. And really not the most attractive green color. Actually, I like green. Green is the color, this is interesting. Green is the color of independence. Did you know that? Autonomy. Really interesting. So psychological. So psychological. Green, just like you look at this picture behind me, and there's green, nice green grass, and Lord Ramchandra is like greenish color. So green is actually the color of independence. So they're actually psychologically manipulating people not to be independent. Nothing wrong with green. And maybe it's not my favorite color. So anyway, so people succumb to doing what they're doing. I mean, it may be the best thing to have an iPhone. I'm not taking a stance on this. Don't want anyone to hate me for taking a particular stance. You know, you got to be politically correct now, neutral with every single thing. I'm not allowed to have opinion in today's world, or else everybody jumps down my throat. I can't be biased, even with electronics anymore. So, anyway, just because of social pressure. And that leads to things like what happened in World War II with the Nazis. Yes, because people did not have the brains to think for themselves. And I would say 90% of the people in Kali Yuga are like that. So anyway, let's get on. So that's why people follow these bogus gurus. They're just so brain dead. Brain dead. And if they happen to be born in a family that worships bogus gurus, they will worship bogus gurus, or they will actually believe in a certain thing just because their family. Nobody asks the questions, why do I do what I'm doing? Or why do I believe what I believe in? You know, epistemological questions. Why? Nobody asks those questions. Or not nobody, but practically nobody asks the questions. And it's just dumbos. If you don't know what a Dumbo is, watch a Walt Disney movie or look up Dumbo. Okay, so let's go on. I probably offended a whole bunch of people already. Sevibinam shajiva dvitara prakara eka nitya mukta eka nitya samsara. The living entities, jivas, are divided into two categories. That's us. Some are eternally liberated and others are eternally conditioned. Of course, eternally, in this particular context, means it doesn't have to be forever and ever, never. It means unless someone intercedes, a pure devotee intercedes on our behalf, we remain conditioned. Nitya Mukta, Nitya Krishna, Charane Unmukta, Krishna Parishara Nama, Punje Sevasuka. Those who are eternally liberated are always awake to Krishna consciousness, and they render, that's like Prabhupada, and render transcendental loving service to the feet of Lord Krishna. They are to be considered eternal associates of Krishna, and they are eternally enjoying the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna. Those are the eternally liberated jiva souls, Vivinamsas. Now there's eternally conditioned. Nitya Bandha, that's us. Krishna Haite, Nitya Bhari Mukha, Nitya Samsarabunje Narakari Dukkha. Apart from the ever-liberated devotees, there are conditioned souls who always turn away from the service of the Lord. They are perpetually conditioned in this material world and are subjected to the material tribulations brought about by different bodily forms and hellish conditions. So this is conditioned. Like we're talking about, we're conditioned by social pressure. We're conditioned by what people think about us. We're conditioned by our own identifications with this body. We're conditioned by our attachments. Wow, I want to be free. I like green. That's the point. Green, now I'm not just speaking jokingly now, but green, if you don't like green, you're in trouble. Because you are conditioned. Actually, there's a great scientist many, many years ago, I think he was Russian, Professor Lusher, who analyzed different colors, what they actually meant psychologically to people. And green does mean independence. Blue means you basically stick with something. You remain loyal regardless of what happens, like true blue. Red means you're passionate. Anyway, I'm not going to analyze the colors. So we should think for ourselves. Prabhupada said we want independently thoughtful persons, not people who do things because of social pressure. Disgusting. Sedoshe maya pishachi dandakari tare adyatmikari taptatraya tare jari mare. Due to his being opposed, that's us, to Krishna consciousness, the conditioned soul is punished by the witch of the external energy, Maya. He is thus ready to suffer the threefold miseries brought about by the body and mind. The inimical behavior of other living entities. Tell me about it. And natural disturbances caused by the demigods. It may snow tonight. Tell me about it, Prabhu. Kama Krodera Dasahana Tara Latikaya Ramate Varamate Yadi Sadhuvai Japaya Tanrapadesha Mantre Pishachi Palaya Krishna Bhakti Paya Tabe Krishna Nikatayaya. In this way, the conditioned soul becomes the servant of lusty desires, and when these are not fulfilled, he becomes a servant of anger or lamentation, and continues to be kicked by the external energy Maya, wandering and wandering throughout the universe. He may, by chance, get the association of a devotee physician, whose instructions and hymns make the witch of the external energy flee. The conditioned soul thus gets in touch with devotional service to Lord Krishna, and in this way he can approach nearer and nearer to the Lord. Let's see if we have time to read this book. We're almost finished with it. Oh my God, it's a long purport. Actually, so we will cover this particular purport and verse again tomorrow. So let's consider that we only went up today to text 13. All right, let me mark that in my little notebook. So we did 1 to 13 and 22. Okay, so let us open up the floor if we were actually on the floor. Open up the floor for questions. Let me allow you to unmute yourselves. Or you can type in your little chat window, or you can, what else can you do? Raise your hand. So, who else has a question? Or who else? Does anybody have a question? And we touch upon some, let us say, touchy subject matters tonight that may influence people psychologically, socially, etc., in addition to being connected to Krishna consciousness. So who has a question? I don't see any hands being raised. Hands? Does anyone have a question? This is your time to be interactive. Questions? We got 38 people on. What makes the Puranas different from the Itihasa? Okay. All right. What makes the Puranas different from the Itihasas? Well, the Puranas have certain subject matters. There's only two Itihasas, basically. And the two Itihasas, or famous Itihasas, there may be other secondary Itihasas, but two Itihasas that are most prominent are the Ramayana and Mahabharata, and these are the histories. Itihasa is basically history. The word means thus it happened. And the Itihasas are usually, it's a blissful history. Ramayana is about Lord Ram. But it's not a presentation of the philosophy in a methodological way. For example, the Bhagavad Purana that we read presents things methodologically. In other words, there's a hierarchy in the Bhagavad Purana. The first part of the Bhagavad Purana, you basically establish some bandha. That means you understand who you are, who the Lord is, what the material energy is, through a series of stories and prayers and expositions by different great personalities, and there's some history in there too. And then as you rise up, then you start to hear the Lord's pastimes, the creation of the material world, and as a culmination in the 10th canto of the Lord's pastimes. And so the Puranas, there's 10 different subject matters that must be covered in the Puranas, including the different histories of kings, and I don't remember that list of 10 right now. Some of you scholars may remember it. But it's a very methodological presentation. Whereas the Itihasas are the histories, and they're not presented in such a methodological way. But still, one has to really delve into the Itihasas to understand the philosophy, because they're not presented so methodologically. That's why after the Mahabharata was composed, Narada Muni, who is the spiritual master of Srila Vyasadeva, chastised Srila Vyasadeva for not presenting things in a methodological way. And that people would be confused by reading the Mahabharata. Some people may not even understand who God is or who Krishna is. Now here's the question. Is greenness of the earth connected to independence? I don't know. It's connected to the fertility of the earth. Also green, and it's also connected to photosynthesis. That's scientific. It's green to be connected to envy. If this is true, is that simply speculation? I guess people turn green when they're envious. I do know that the colors taken by themselves indicate certain psychological states. And there is a whole system of analysis. This is not a spiritual subject, but I'm just explaining how people's minds become manipulated by the media. That's all. Manipulated by the media, by technology, manipulated by their friends, manipulated by society, whatever. I mean, look what happened in Germany before and during World War II. People were manipulated, and after the war was over, people really were shocked at what they had done, what they had believed in, who they followed. And you'll find this to a large extent politically in certain countries that shall remain nameless, like America, where people follow and they go to rallies of a particular leader, and even if this leader is obviously cheating and lying and whatever, they are brainwashed. I mean, for lack of a better word. Wow. I mean, and yes, I'm compassionate because I see that most people are brainwashed and they can't think independently. It makes me very compassionate, and I pray for them. Prabhupada wanted independently thoughtful devotees in the Krishna conscious movement. So here's a question. Hare Krishna, Gurudev. How can we practice compassionate towards each other in the congregation? Read my book, which talks about empathic communication, and to understand that everybody acts in such a way as to fulfill certain needs. So that brings into question, why do people just follow the leader? Now, people follow the leader because they basically have a need for security, making sense out of this world. Because, people look at this world and it doesn't make sense unless one actually understands Krishna. But if one doesn't come to Krishna, the spiritual master, have purified senses, then it's sort of, it's just bewildering. You gotta follow something blindly. Okay. Prabhupada didn't want devotees following things blind. He said, blind following absurd inquiries are condemned. Here's a question from JG. The cosmic manifestation is real but temporary. How can the material energy be identified with Maya? So, of course, the word Maya means energy. It means illusion. And the illusion it's actually described in the Chatra Shloka verse, Vrite na pratyeta chatmani tadvidyat yadatmano mayam yatabasha yatatamam. That if someone sees things, it's not actually Maya if you see it connected to Krishna. It's not illusion, let's say. Let's use the word generally that's translated from the word Maya. It's not illusion if you see it connected to Krishna. Then it's not an illusory world. It's only an illusory world when you see, because of its energy of illusion, the throwing and the keeping an illusion, it's only the illusory world when you see it as disconnected from Krishna. You don't see the connection to everything, but the connection that everything has with Krishna. That's really important for a devotee, to see everything in this world as connected to Krishna. And then it's not Maya. Vishvam Purno Shukhayate. Then one sees the whole universe as bliss, happiness. So, that's a good question. That actually is a very good question. So, any other questions? If not, we will end tonight's or this morning's class. It's good to see everybody. We had quite a few people on, 41, 42 at one point, a little less now. So I really, really appreciate having you all join us. You're all great personalities, and I like you all. Okay, I guess that's it. We'll see you all tomorrow, same time, same station. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.